Yep. Bro, I need your permission for a video.
All right, check that out.
Okay, cool.
Good.
Are you launching this, or you want me to launch it?
Do it.
You're doing it?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay. Just do this.
Know what episode number this is by any chance?
No clue. I can't keep count.
Just told me it's having. Oh, there we go. Just trying to figure out which episode this is. It's 32.
Interesting. Now on our Facebook page, you can have the cover photo be a 20 to 90 second video.
On the business page?
Yeah.
Cool.
That's pretty sweet.
Should do that. Oh, there we go. All right, going live.
Okay.
Tell you when it's ready. Well, it'll say it in the Zoom.
I don't see anything just yet.
Yeah, it's still should be up right now.
Now we're good?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I don't see anything just yet.
Yeah, it's there. Should be up right now.
Here we go. Yep. Okay, cool. Awesome. All right. Well, welcome everybody.
Mm-hmm.
How you doing, broski?
Getting there.
Cool. You had a rough couple.
More than a couple, yeah.
Yeah. For those of you guys that are just coming on,
just mute this up. Okay.
just say hi. Let us know that you're here, present, ready. I have a feeling today's going to be a good one. That you're here, present, ready. Is that yours?
Just post it, okay?
Say it again. Hey, Kathleen. The recital was amazing.
All right. I'm ready when you are.
Yeah. The recital was so funny.
It's too cute.
I
think
learned
it's funny,
that
like they rehearse on stuff, but they're all like staring at her for like every single move and completely out of synchronicity. She's wearing the wrong shoes.
Well, that was those videos were from the dress rehearsal.
I see.
But either way, the kids, like at that age, they're so young, they're not.
Yeah.
They don't know the moves on their own.
Not in the wheelhouse.
No. The worst part was, though, that there were girls there that have been dancing for, I don't know, figure they started Aaliyah's age. There were easily, like 16, 17-year-old girls there that were just as atrocious.
Great way to start the Facebook Live.
I'm like,
what have you been doing for the last bunch of years, decade plus?
Well, I think that says more about the teachers than it does about the students.
Yeah. I mean, we walked out of there and both Fanny and I were like, yeah, if she wants to continue to dance, I don't know that this is the place to.
No. I could just tell from the teacher. She's like probably watching YouTube videos and teaching them.
There's a super cute video of Shai that we posted, by the way, the other day. I don't know if you saw it. He came home and he loved it. When I mean like loved it, I mean he was the loudest person in the auditorium, screaming, just like cheering, like woo, clapping every song. I was like, I'm sitting there and I didn't recognize his scream, but I'm sitting there and at one point it's like halfway through and I just keep hearing this voice like yelling, like woo. And I'm like, wow, someone really is excited about this. It was my son.
Like father, like son.
So funny. So yeah, he came home and he's like, I want to go to dance class.
Awesome.
And I was like, okay. And then it was so funny because like this is cultural stuff. Yeah. So I was there with Fanny's parents and grandparents, and they heard him say that he wanted to go to dance class, and they look at me, they're like, he can't go to dance class. And I'm like, why can't, like I didn't bring it up at the time, but I'm thinking to myself, like, why can't he go to dance class? The kid wants to go to dance class, go to dance class. And then he tops it off. Like I see them getting uneasy. He goes, so Fanny's like, well, what do you want to learn to dance? He's like, ballet. And I just see them like.
Just let me know when you want to get the Facebook Live going.
So funny. People. I'm curious what you want to talk about today.
I don't know. Better I'm guided than I lead.
Better what?
Better that I'm guided than I lead today.
Well, I'll tell you what's
we can talk about breakdown if you want.
Yeah, that's a good place. I was going to take it in another direction, but yeah.
I mean, what did you have in mind?
No, we can do this on Wednesday. Someone posted a question and they were asking about because we've been talking a lot about like following your heart, and they were kind of in that world of like, at what point do you just kind of surrender and let shit happen as it may versus like getting out there and doing stuff? Wow, that's really strange.
Sorry.
You're a floating head.
Oh, white shirt's the wrong thing. I need to wear a colored shirt.
Yeah. But yeah, I like breakdown because I think that's something that everyone is in or has been in, and B is just, I think, very present.
First of all, how's my volume? I'm okay?
Perfect.
Okay. I think there's, I know for me it exists for sure. There's like a disillusion of when you've done X, meaning X being enough work, like you've overcome some things, and that tends to not be the case. I think what's interesting about doing any kind of spiritual personal development work, it's not so much about the overcome. Oftentimes we'll say it's like how fast can you get back on balance when you're driven off balance.
Yeah.
I think the other side of it is also like what are the stretches of time that you spend in balance versus times that you spend out of balance. So I think definitely what I noticed for me, and I'll just give a little background on why I'm sharing this in a minute, is just like prolonged periods of either ecstasy, like ecstatic states, or just like ease and joy and play and lightness. And that doesn't mean that there are still circumstances which me and I'm sure anybody else are not prepared for, or that catch you off guard, and kind of come into your life and challenge you. And usually when you're challenged, you kind of head back towards at least I do, I'll talk for me, core wound patterns. And then you watch yourself do all the things that you thought you'd never do again with people and circumstances and reactions and stuff like that. So I mean, it's definitely not the first time I've talked about this kind of stuff before. But the last just year and a half for me has just been dealing with a lot of heartache. About a year, less than even a year and a half ago, as hard as that is to believe, came out of a 3-year relationship. That one felt really complete though. And still, it's definitely a loss when you're with somebody you love and you're not living together anymore. Just challenges about being in the same domicile after she moved out, and like things and circumstances are tied to memories, obviously. And then soon thereafter, I met somebody, and the last year and change, we've kind of been together, sometimes on, sometimes off. And January, that relationship ended, and that was pretty devastating heartbreak to deal with at the time. And then came out of that and went into this really prolonged, like ecstatic period. Ilan and I went to Colombia. I was in Costa Rica, had some really, really amazing experiences. And then I was in a super empowered state and let that person back into my life. And then slowly but surely things kind of started up again, not really in a relational way, but just spending more time together. And I kind of had this false pretense that I was okay with that. And, quickly found myself just kind of wanting it to be a relationship again. And that's not what she wanted. So it kind of became this exchange of why we weren't together for quite a bit of while. And then right before I left for my trip to British Columbia and Bali, we kind of put an end to it. And I don't think I really realized the impact that would have on me. So, it's funny. Heartbreak specifically for me is one of the more interesting, if not this like what's the word I'm looking for? Not pleasant experience, like emotional experiences. Yeah. So the first week I really thought I was fine, and then like week 2 it kind of caught up with me, and I was in Bali that whole time, and I was in a circumstance where I don't think I allowed myself to fully express it. Partly because I didn't want to ruin my vacation, partly around the people I was in. It was just kind of like this great energy. But if you've ever had heartbreak, you kind of know that it really like takes you out. Like you just don't feel like yourself. It kind of puts like a gray film on everything. And it makes you feel really disempowered, and it's hard to get motivated and all the other stuff. And I like being Superman. And if, there couldn't be anything farther from the truth when you're heartbroken. It's like complete kryptonite. And that just went on for a while. So I kind of like went through some stuff when I was out on my vacation. Again, like kind of got into this place where I'm like, I feel pretty good. And then I was really excited about coming home and just like getting some love from my friends and like getting back into patterning, And then like I land home, and the moment I get home, I just feel just tension and choking and all these things everywhere. And I had to like host a lot of stuff over that weekend. And it was just like, hiding it all again, just like trying to hide what was going on internally, just because it wasn't like the environment to express all that in. So last week was just all of that. It was just like reprocessing the whole thing and just like a lot of difficult emotions. And it was kind of I've been telling people that, when you're on your way home and you need to take a shit really, really bad, like you're in the car.
Oh, we're going there.
Yeah. And you're just like, there's kind of pain, but you're like, okay, I can hold it. I got to hold it. So you kind of hold it. But then the moment you pull into the driveway, like your body knows it's home, and it's just like, it's time to release, It's kind of been like that, but in an emotional way where I felt like I wasn't aware that I was emotionally constipating myself because of those little things of not wanting it to show up, not wanting to like, ruin people's mood and kind of be this like dark, sad energy. So I came home and it was just like all that. Now the funny part about that is like my patterning, and I'm sure for a lot of people when you're dealing with this kind of stuff, is obviously like loneliness comes up and like self-love and, why do you need somebody else to validate who you are and that you have worth and that having this person is even important and all these kind of things that show up. So it just like, right back into 5 years old, right back into like complete loneliness, right back into the people in your life don't really love you. You show up for them. They don't show up for you. To the point where I just found my mind just getting angry at everybody. And it's like, okay, well, nobody really knows. Nobody can be part of your emotional experience. Nobody knows what you're going through. I asked for support where I could. It's interesting to watch stuff like this go on now when you're having such a severe emotional response to something. And, in the past, and it's just kind of like the balance and maybe where I can ask you and like what you think about it. is like, you know, the balancing game now for me is like, my mind wants to have the pity party, right?
Okay.
I have enough training to know that that's not functional. So it's like, okay, well, I'm not
Oh,
going to.
it's very functional. It's just not supportive of what you choose to want.
Oh, absolutely. Right. So there's like the emotional response, and then there's getting responsible for what the mind is creating as thoughts, because that whatever the thoughts are, it's pushing that down into the subconscious. Yeah. And I don't want to program that in, you know? So I don't want to program in sadness. I don't want to program in anger. I don't want to program any of that stuff in. And I want positivity and I want light. And it's just really difficult to see that in that gray state. So it was kind of this game of, I want to fully express these emotions, and yet I don't want to become a victim of them. So it's like, okay, how do you go through such a severe emotional response and continue to watch it and not get engulfed in it? And it's been interesting because this happened in January, and in January, like, it engulfed me. Even though I had a lot of gratitude for what was happening, it like did engulf me. This time it happened again, and I didn't expect the response to be quite as severe. And then maybe it wasn't. Like, I don't think the devastation was there like in January. However, you know, like, I kept thinking to myself, I'm like, could I pull myself out of this emotional state, you know, with some mind tricks and meditation? And of course I did stuff like that, because it's like, who wants to sit in that emotional state? And at the same time, if I'm dealing with like core wound issues, and I could be observant and present to them in a way that I haven't let myself be in the past, my feeling was and is that there's an opportunity there for completion in ways that I've never had before. And that's kind of why I didn't like, okay, well, let me go fix this, because I definitely don't want to have that mentality. It's like, there's nothing wrong. Like, I can't control the fact that my body is hurting right now. Yeah, so I guess, I don't know if there's a question in there, but that's kind of my line of thinking.
So, a couple of things. One, I just want to back up a little bit and just create a little bit of a context for breakdown for people so that they understand what we're talking about. Breakdown is any time in your life where you're met with struggle, you're met with resistance, you're met with frustration, you're met with anger. It's that feeling that comes with it. It might be heavy. It might be lack of breath. It's anytime we like to say, like, when you're in it, you know, when life is happening and you're just in it, and it feels like your head is like here, just trudging above the water, and you're surviving mode. And it's just like, God, please let this be over. Why is this happening to me? That whole experience. So that's the breakdown that we just want to kind of create with you. And it's something that, as a human being, I think what we tend to do is we make that very wrong. And what I mean by making it very wrong is, like, it shouldn't be this way. I shouldn't be feeling this way. My life should be better. I should be happier. This stuff shouldn't happen to me. And so I just want to reiterate something that Guy said when we first started. Like, Guy's done 15 years of personal development work. Okay. And, you know, I had conversations with him. My dad had conversations with him. Other people had conversations with him. My dad called me in like a state of panic, like, what's happening to Guy? I don't understand. Why can't he get out of this? I'm like, listen, you know, when you're in it, it's like when you're on stage, whether at our live event or at another seminar, and someone's working with you, everyone in the room will get what your thing is way before you do. Because when you're in it, you're in it. You're emotionally invested. It's very difficult sometimes to see past all of your filters and emotions and all that stuff to the logic part of the brain. It's not there, right? So I just wanted to kind of create a little bit of that context. And I think the question that you asked in there, if I caught it, was, how do you go between feeling it versus avoiding it and pushing it away and being like, I'm not going to experience this, and then just completely bypassing that part? Was that kind of the question?
Yeah, I think, you know, I don't know if there's an answer to that, but it's definitely, that's the line I felt like I was treading, right, between fully experiencing the emotions and feeling worthy of that, and not getting so engulfed by it and turning it basically into a victim. And mind you, for that, everyone who's watching it, like, I'm a million times better this week than I was last week. I spent the whole weekend just like really doing work with myself, basically. And a lot of it is just bringing it to the surface and feeling it, to be honest. It's like, otherwise it's a constant state of oppression, right? And that's kind of what this last month was. It's like, I want to, but I kind of can't hear. I want to, but I kind of can't hear, right? And then it's like pushing it down, and then it all comes to the surface. So for me, it's like actually inducing that and going through those processes really as quickly as I possibly can was kind of the goal. And then that's kind of what I spent doing all weekend.
Yeah. And I just want to explain to people that the work that Guy and I started doing when we first kind of got into the personal development space was very cerebral in nature. So a lot of it was understanding what is happening in your mind, hearing those thoughts, separating that from yourself. And then there was some very distinct, very powerful tools to almost like bypass the circuitry that you didn't, like, you would notice it and you could just kind of like move it away into another sector, which is great. I mean, it works amazingly well. Nothing to take away from that. I think where we're both at in our experience as human beings is that we are now choosing to feel the emotion, choosing to be in the experience, because we're very clear that we've called that experience into our lives to help us receive more love, receive more light, receive more wisdom. And so instead of being like, no, it doesn't work for me, and boom, it's like actually being in it and allowing there to be no judgment while in it. The fine line, though, right? It's like balance. You know, we talk about this balance all the time, the fine line, and this is, I think, is a really interesting topic to talk about. I'd love to hear, by the way, if you guys have any feedback on it for the people who are listening. The finding that balance, and Guy, you and I spoke about this, I think, the other day, where it's like, you know, at what point do you go, I felt what I needed to feel, and I'm now ready to go just through it to the other side? And when does that happen? And the answer is, I wish I had an answer.
Look, I mean, it happens when it's supposed to happen, right? It's difficult to have patience, especially I think when somebody is dealing with sadness or heaviness like that, because that experience like seems to elongate time. It's like, you know, when you're having like a time, what's it? Time delineation. That's dilation. Dilation or delineate. Yeah, dilation. But my point is like, what's that line? When time moves fast when you're having fun? I don't know why it's not coming to me. Yeah. It's something time flies when you're having fun. So it's like, yeah, time flies when you're having fun. So it's almost like time comes to a standstill where you're not. You know, it's like when you're going through difficult things, like time just elongates, and it's like, okay, well, all right, when is this going to pass? Like, I mean, think about even with a workout, right? Like when you have a timer in front of you and you're getting to that end, like that last 10 seconds of the set, that last 10 seconds is like the entire minute. You're like, God, why is this 10 seconds not moving? Exactly. Right. Yeah. And it's totally the same thing. So it's like, where the mind is focused, it could change the experience of time completely. You know what, like for me, it's interesting because I feel like trauma brings out the best usually. It brings out the worst and the best. It can have some really, really difficult moments, but if you're present, it's an extreme place for just a lot of really strong, powerful insights that really shift your life. But it's like that having the insight doesn't directly change the experience in the moment, but the insight is the new programming that in the long run creates like sustainable transformation. Because for me, like end of relationships are the periods for best growth. Like I always find, you know, from these most difficult periods, I find myself in like the best periods of my life. So sure. I kind of know that's coming. So I kind of want to offer you guys, like, here's a practice I've been putting into my life for about a year and a half. I'm sure I'm not the inventor of it, but it just like came to me. It wasn't like something that happened in a book or anything like that. And I've shared this before, I got to a point where like looking at our bank account was stressful. Even when we were making a lot of money, it's stressful because it's like, when's enough? Like, when are you going to feel free around money? And I shared this a while back, but I said, I sat there and I meditated and I kept increasing the number of the bank account in my head. And I stopped when I got to 10 million. And I stopped not because I felt better, because I didn't feel any different at $10 million than I did with a few $100,000. Like there's no change in my emotional state. And I said, okay, well, what's the point of the money? And I said, well, I'm waiting for the money because I know I'm going to feel some way when I get there. But I kind of did this experiment and I realized like no amount of money is going to make me feel that way. But what I'm looking for, or I should say, and what I'm looking for is that there's some feeling associated with security and having enough, right? Or whatever that means. And I was like, okay, well, how would I feel if I felt like I had enough? Not because the number's there, I just felt like I had enough. And I could immediately feel that I could create that sensation in my body. So I've done that now for like a year and a half, and I don't think it's any coincidence that, our bank account has grown tremendously during that time. Not to mention the stress around money it's like 1/10 of what it used to be. And again, that's like conscious thoughts that if you just like think about like a string from your consciousness down to your subconsciousness, you're just sending like, we don't have stress, like we're chill around money. We're chill around money. And the thing is like, cool, we're chill around money. Right. Or create more abundance. Like your subconscious is going to create whatever conscious programming that you're throwing into there. Most people just repeat really negative stuff all the time. So when, we had the conversation Wednesday or Thursday, whatever it was, I went to bed that night and I did two things. Number one, when you're fucked up like that, you forget your power. So I'm like, I need to listen to myself in a powerful state. So I went and listened back to a interview me and Mateo Ra did. And if you guys haven't heard that, by the way, like not every single person, but a lot of people who've listened to it have given me feedback and said that interview is just sensational. Like on the regular. So I highly recommend watching that, listening to that. And the reason I listened to it is because Dad told me that he listened to it 4 times. Like, he's like, I've listened to it 4 times. It blew my mind. I was like, awesome. So I'm like, I should probably listen to myself talking. So I kind of listened to it a little bit here, a little bit there. And then I kind of shared what I just shared with you guys about like, future tensing. So my personal belief is that dualism, time, and even universal laws are nothing more than experiences of language and the dualistic mind. So if we take that away and we start looking at the truth of everything, is the universe is quantum, meaning that there's no time really. Everything is in a singularity. So everything that ever has happened, is happening, and will happen it's all like one thing that language just can't decipher. We have a multiverse, which means all possibilities are available to you. And there's no causality, meaning nothing is causing one thing or another. So if I look at that and I break that down, it means the breakup didn't cause my emotions. Right? My core wounds did. Quantum, meaning that there's that line that we have, the time heals all wounds, is not true because there's no time. So how can time be healing anything? It can't, which means that there's something that can happen in the present moment now to state change myself. Just like the state change from I'm fine to I'm not fine, right? Like something, whatever, created it. And then in the multiverse, like all things are possible. I'm just living in a certain possibility now. So I went to bed that evening and I kind of did the same exercise on myself. I said, look, if time wasn't an issue, what I'm upset about is the way that I feel right now, the sensations in my body. And I know like 3 months from now, a year from now, 3 years from now, I'm going to look back at this moment, like right now, and say a few things. Thank God this happened.
Yep.
I'm going to see particular lessons, and I'm going to have a certain sensation in the future that I'm going to associate with this past moment. So I thought to myself, well, how would I feel 3 years from now about right now? And I said, I know I would be nothing but grateful, love, possibility, like all that would be present. I'm like, okay, well, how would that feel for me? And just like with the money, I started generating that experience for myself and allowing my body to vibrate in that pleasurable place. And I did that right before I went to bed, which I think is actually pretty key. Because if you do it during the day, that's great. Like it's good for training. But whatever you put into the brain right before you go to bed, my personal opinion is that's going to take shape much faster. Because the nighttime is where the brain and the unconscious goes into this really deep processing programming mode. And I think there's a huge opportunity for everybody to reprogram. So we always say do alignment in the morning and do upgrades at night, basically. So that was an opportunity for me to do an upgrade. And I started vibrating that way. And I woke up the next morning for the first time feeling like, I don't want to say free of it, but much more free. And then Ilan and I even did an interview that day. And, if anybody, when these kind of moments happen, it's because the mind is adding significance, like a lot of significance to the moment. And if you ever notice, when you're being significant, you usually are not being very funny. Like your sense of humor goes right the fuck out the window. And then it's like when you're empowered, your sense of humor is like alive, present, you're really cheerful. And we did an interview and, my sense of humor was back. I kind of had this lightness about me and so on and so forth. And then again, there's like this illusion that you're kind of through it. But of course, there's like other things that can, that can trigger it. So for me, that's been a really great exercise and something to be mindful of in like really all areas of life. And then I'll say one more thing. The last thing that I'm doing is I'm writing and creating my best life. So like around health, I'm reading a book right now called The Power of the Subconscious. If you ever read, I don't remember his name, but there's other books by Dr. Joe Dispenza. The amount of material and case studies that we have about the healing power of the subconscious mind and the fact that it's just producing reality as we know it is, in my point of view, beyond substantial, right? Like there literally is more data for this and being mindful and meditation than again there is for you taking Advil and it reducing pain and a headache. Like we don't have much data for that, but we have all this other data that provides the power of the subconscious mind. Now you're at the control wheel, pushing things down to the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind is the thing behind the curtain, making it all happen. So if you're not mindful, when we say like be mindful, be conscious, be present, it's actually being present to the thoughts that you're pushing down into the subconscious mind that it's going to go create for you. So, that was the thing that I wanted to be super careful of is like, fine, you're having an emotional experience. Don't program this in as your new normal. Because trauma, this is like what PTSD I'm sure is, and all these other things is like these pervasive thoughts that go in and just like start hammering the subconscious mind. It's like, okay, let's do that. Like you're telling me what to do. Your wish is my command. And I think that's the same thing for in like religious speak. What's above, such as below. You could say what's above, such as below, and it's going to create the same thing. So it's been an interesting thing to go through in this state of consciousness that I'm in, and be super mindful of it. And still, I was a little shit at the same time. Even have room for that and being mindful of that. So it's like it's impressive as to when you're wounded like that, how out of control it all seems. And it's been really interesting to be present to it at the same time.
So I have a question for you because it seems like you're out of it, and we obviously had
I don't want to say I'm out of it.
Well,
yeah, because you don't know. You don't know what's going to.
You're of a more inquisitive and inquiring mind than when we spoke.
I would say I'm more empowered and I'm freer. I don't like the claim of out of it because then it's like it's wrong when you're back in it.
Yeah, true. So in that moment, if you can look back to that moment, would you say that your like physiology is hijacked at that place? Because I remember trying to have like the things that you're saying now were things that I felt like I was trying to communicate with you, and maybe I didn't communicate them in this way, but it just felt like that's kind of what I was trying to say. And obviously at that moment, because I really want people to get the experience of being in it. Like at that moment, because, okay, so here's the reason for my question. There are people, you're either one of these people, or there are people in your lives that are in pain or struggling or upset or angry all the time. And people that are on this with us on the regular, I know that you're not here because of you. Because of you is like secondary, maybe even tertiary. You're here because you're looking to become a better human being such that you could be a better mother, father, brother, sister, son, daughter, right? Like it's so much bigger than you. And so, like dad obviously was hurting when you were in this. I'm hurting when you're in this. Obviously no one wants to see you in this. And it feels like when you're trying to help someone that's in this situation, a lot of the times, and I guys, let me know if this resonates for you. Like a lot of the times it fully backfires. Like it just explodes back in your face and you kind of get slammed against the wall and you're like, well, fuck that. Like, I'm not even going to try. And I want to talk to, there's two things I'd like to get out of it. One, you know, when you were in it, what was that experience like? And two, is there a better way that we can share with the people listening to this on how to be with people who are going through breakdown such that they can be a support and not have that experience? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think with situations like these, okay, if you get in an argument with somebody and the emotion hasn't died down, can you make a difference with that person?
I mean, at that moment, like where I was when that was happening, I was like, there's nothing.
Yeah. Okay. So that's my point, right? If you're in an argument with a spouse or something, and one or either both of you or one of you is still in that heightened emotional upset state,
yes,
there's no communication getting through.
It's like I just want you guys to understand that in that state, when someone is in it, right, like fully pissed, angry, frustrated, etc., they're a hijacked human being. And what I mean by hijacked human being, like there's so much chemical stuff happening in their brain and body. It's like dealing with a 5-year-old in a tantrum. Like there's no amount of logic. There's no amount of anything that you're going to bring to that conversation that they're going to be like, oh, you know what? You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
So I just want you guys to understand, like, that's what it means to deal with someone who's in it.
Well, I'll take it even further. It's because like I have enough consciousness in mind. Like, right, we had that argument on Wednesday or Thursday, whenever that happened, and it's not like it took me long to like take responsibility for it, right? Like if I kept, and that was even in my upset, I could do that, which is interesting because that's pretty new to be able to do that. Here's what I'll say about it though. Like, even I think in that kind of state, even if you hear the truth, it's like again, like emotions. It's like, again, it's like, it puts you in a fog, right? I kind of call it a gray state, but it puts you in this fog. It's like, you can't even hear things the same way. I feel like there's, like my brain's working at 25% of its capacity when that's going on. I could hear the truth and the brain's just like hearing it, but it's not really receiving it.
So I just want to clarify something here. So like when you're in it though, you had no idea that you were listening at even, let's say, 25%.
No, I do.
You do? Okay.
I do. I don't know if anybody else would, but like, I know that I can hear the truth, and it's like the brain is just not willing to receive that information at that time. I think the brain puts itself, like, you're so stuck in an old pattern that it's like, that's the pattern. So it's like anything else that comes in, truth, not truth, doesn't matter. It's just like cognitive dissonance with politics or religion. You can hear something that makes perfect sense and will completely alter your life, but you're like, this is my cognitive dissonance. I hear you. Fuck you. Right? Like, it doesn't matter.
It's almost like you would just rather be right about exactly what's happening and exactly what's in your experience, and nothing else really makes a difference.
I don't know if I would rather be right, because I'm clear that being right is causing my pain. So again, like, I don't know if that's my personal experience. I'm sure for a lot of people that would be. It's just like, there's nothing else right now. Nothing else is available right now. There's like a window that opens up for possibility. And when that window is not open, nothing new is possible. So it's like, I could hear all that. So even, Dad's funny to me because dad seems to,
so if you're going to say anything crazy,
that's fine. It's not nothing I wouldn't say to his face. Dad seems to live in this place where it's like, when you do enough work, these responses should stop. Like, how come you haven't overcome this thing yet? Like, haven't you fixed yourself or whatever it is? And it's like, no, I haven't. And it's like, these are core programming things. Like, a computer can be reprogrammed, and yet the old programming lives on and sustains itself. Again, I think the point is not to destroy that programming and overcome it. It's to have all these other programs that you can run and sustainably run them for long periods of time. But it's like, you don't know how many triggers that old programming has. You might. there might be 1,001 triggers in there and you only find 1,000. And then once in a while that one thing happens and it's like triggers. Heartache, a broken heart, whatever you want to call that, I think is one of those triggers that like pulls the rug out from underneath your feet in such an unexpected way. You have that, and I'm sure like death, like someone's passing that's sudden, because it kind of is the same, in a way. Like when you break up with somebody, you have to like almost like let them go, like they've passed away.
It's the same. Piece of you dies.
What?
A piece of you dies.
Yeah,
in both situations.
Because you give up a piece of yourself, and then it's like kind of like finding that out again. Otherwise, that's kind of a relationship. So, how are you going to respond? I don't know. And it's like to have conversations with somebody. So just to go back and like kind of answer your question, to have conversations with somebody, like there's something we can do right now that's going to make you stop feeling this and start feeling something else. Is it possible? Maybe. I think it's prudent to ask anybody in a situation like that. It's like, what would serve you best right now? For me, it's like people reaching out, just checking in and making sure I haven't like hung myself somewhere in a closet. That's helpful. Just knowing that people give a shit at all. Like I know when somebody passes, what do you do? What do you say to somebody? Like you're speechless with the phone call. And that's why we've come up with things like, you have my condolences. Okay, great. Your condolences. However, I know when like Zvi passed and people called me, I was like, thank you. Like the fact that you took time out of your day to care, something like a happy birthday or anything else like that, that makes a big difference. And that's kind of where I didn't really feel supported by a lot of my friends, because I kind of had set them in this really tough jam. And like, maybe I didn't say, hey, it would be great if you guys, spend more time with me or whatever it is. But on the other side of it, I know I'm kind of like a miserable fuck right now, and like spending time with me isn't so fun. But if my friend was in that kind of jam, I'd suck it up and I would spend time with them regardless of.
So I just want this came up with me and you, and I just want to point this out, that in that moment, you want support the way you give support.
Yes.
Right?
Which is not fair.
Which is not fair because people aren't programmed that way.
Yep.
And they give support the way they give support. And for you at that moment, when you were like in it, when people were providing their support the way they provide the support, it still wasn't good enough.
Yes.
Because it wasn't the way
it doesn't match. It doesn't match my support systems, right?
And so I really want to point that out. Like these, and we do this all the time. Like every one of us does this. We don't see the way other people are. We see how we are in other people. Mm-hmm. And so when someone behaves a certain way, you're not like, oh, that behavior is perfect. You're thinking like, that motherfucker, why didn't they do it this way? Because that's the way that you would do it. They're not you. Mm-hmm. They don't have your life experiences. They don't have your memories. They don't have your anything. Biology, genetics, nothing. Upbringing. And so to expect anyone else to operate like you, unless you specifically ask like, hey, what would really support me is if you did X, Y, and Z. If you spelled it out for them and gave them the playbook, then you could expect that in return if they agree to it, right? Otherwise, it's a fool's errand. Like you're never going to follow that.
That's really, really good. That's really, really good.
So, and then one of the analogy that just occurred to me as you were saying this, because we're big on like this computer software, upgrade your system internally. What I just realized is like what happens, and it's funny because I just had a conversation, which will be launched on a podcast soon, with this woman, Lori Kosser. And she was saying that there's like two parts of our brain, the task part of our brain and the task operation, and the other one she called, I can't remember right now, some other processing. But what happens is like when you're hijacked, in essence, what's happening is like the RAM of your computer is maxed out. And the RAM that you're using is fully focused on that feeling, being right about how you feel at that moment. And when you're talking about like nothing else can come in, no other information can be processed because the RAM is like fully running that program right now. Everything else comes to a standstill. And if you think about what you said, like stuff can like seep in, but it's not conscious. It's just like, sentences and this and that. When you went to bed, you were like, here's what I'm going to do. So at this point, what's happening? Your RAM is dropping, right? And like that energy can now go to other aspects of your brain, and all of these things that were just kind of like loose ends and word and a trigger and a this, like at that nighttime where you're basically saying is like, hey brain, enough with that. Like take this information and start making sense of this information while I sleep, and you have full access to the whole computer. And then you woke up and you're like, whoa, this feels different. So it's just interesting as you're talking, I was like, holy shit, it literally is like a computer.
Well, it makes a lot of sense, right? Like if you're going to take an antidepressant or a drug or medicine or anything else, right? I don't care what you're taking. There's an impact on your receptor sites. It's being flooded with some receptor sites. I'm sure that's what antidepressants do. They block certain receptor sites that would give you the sensation of sadness or whatever. Okay. And then it's like that information that the body wants to send you can no longer get in. The body is eventually like gives up, right? And whatever, hopefully it works. And I think it's the same thing when you're having a heightened emotional state. You're just flooding receptor sites. So it's like people can talk, but the receptor sites that would actually take in that information that it would make a difference for, it's like the ears are hearing, but the chemicals are not getting into the receptor sites because you're basically blocking them with your experience. And that's kind of, I think, how it occurs. It's a kind of like you're in an echo chamber. People are talking, it kind of makes sense, but it's all like brr, 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 it's not really going in. And I think what you're talking about here with the reprogramming is when your body's in a relaxed state, like meditation, it's probably doing a lot less of that. It's not sending so much because you're much more conscious. And then you could consciously say, hey body, here's the chemical experience I actually want. Give me that. It's like, all right, well, let's play with that overnight. You wake up and those chemicals are kind of like alive and present. And that's kind of what happened the next day. I woke up in a really different emotional state.
Yeah, sorry. The reason meditation is so powerful, like scientifically, when they put brains under fMRI machines, is that there's these two parts of the brain, right? There's like the reptilian brain and there's the neocortex, which is the much more logic part of the brain. And the reptilian brain generally gets all of that energy first. So when you're in a heightened state, fear, anxiety, emotion, whatever, that's just like everything goes to that part of the brain. What meditation does is it actually allows the logic part of the brain to stay more active in those humans that meditate on a regular basis so that you're not taken over and hijacked by that experience. So if you look around the world, right, like someone will get into a heated conversation or whatever, and they're gone. I mean, fucked for like 2-3 days at a time, just mulling this over. I can't believe this person did this. And they're going out to everyone in their environment. This motherfucker, like over and over, and just more energy and more energy and more energy, where someone that's actually meditated can witness that experience, feel all that stuff, because that's what's going to happen in your brain no matter what, and still have a presence of awareness to logically almost like see themselves from the outside and go, oh, that could potentially knock me out for the next 2-3 weeks. Like, am I really choosing that? Like, is this worth my next X amount of time? And just to Guy's credit, like, look, I mean, to put this in perspective, Guy and I got on Skype. He said what he said. I didn't react. Like, I just kind of sat there and let him say whatever he wanted to say. Then my non-reaction reacted him. So we had like our first, well, if you're not going to fucking say anything, then fuck you. And we hung up on Skype. Then we had a slight text message thing back and forth on Skype, which also ended in another fuck you. We got back on Skype. This is, guys, this is like, I'm talking like this whole thing that I'm about to share with you is like a 5-minute window, maybe 8 minutes. Then we were like, the problem with, well, not the problem, the blessing that Guy and I have is we love each other so much that we can't actually stay mad at each other. Like, we can get really heated for a second, and then the second it happens, like, I don't even know if you were in that state of just like, if it occurred to you, it must have clearly. Like, as soon as we say fuck you to the other person, it's like you're saying fuck you to yourself. It's like, it's so, when we hung up, it doesn't matter. Like, you can't do anything. You're just like in this state of like, I can't believe that just happened. This doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Right. And so we got back on Skype. We started talking again. And then this time I reacted. So he's like, well, this is not helping, so fuck you. We had another fuck you moment. And then we started typing again, back and forth, saying not nice things to each other. Like it wasn't.
But you know what? Here's the thing: like the release valve on tension like that, always for me, is just someone stepping up and taking a responsibility and saying what they're actually committed to in the conversation. Because it's like otherwise your commitments to being right. Like I'm committed to a relationship with my brother. I know that's not going to happen blaming him, you know, and taking responsibility. The funny part was when we were writing back and forth like that, my first thought is like, I'm like, this is why people stop talking to each other for decades.
For sure.
And then it's 10 years passes by and you're like, why did we start doing all this shit? It's like the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. Nobody fucking remembers.
Yeah. That was my punchline, is that we went through the cycle of what most people can do in a decade in 8 minutes. Because, and this is really important, like our commitment to our relationship is like, it's a third entity. It's not me, it's not him, it's this whole other thing, which is the commitment of the relationship. And so if you're like, I'm being a fucking asshole, he's being a fucking asshole, like, and then the relationship goes like, you're both being fucking assholes, and one of you needs to take responsibility, because for us to exist, this entity, this doesn't work. And like Guy and I mean, the thought of letting that hang in the air and trying to go to bed that night is impossible, right? So like at that point when I got heated, what I was just gonna be like, I'm stepping away from Skype. I need like 5 minutes to kind of like breathe through this. And literally during that time, as I'm doing my letting go process, Guy actually came out and just said flat out, he was like, look, I'm taking responsibility that the way that I communicated my frustration and anger was not the best way. And as soon as he did that, that was like the opening now for a whole other conversation to be had. Literally, like that one sentence changed everything.
Yeah,
and at that point, I was like, thank you for saying that. I got it. And then we started typing back and forth, and we're like, this is ridiculous. Like, let's, get back on. And we had an awesome conversation for about an hour, and we just got really clear. Like, for me, I was clear that he was upset at me, and I was clear that what I did or didn't do was in part a cause of his being upset. My intention when I heard all of that was, okay, how do we actually help so that this doesn't happen in the future? Like, how can I improve myself? And there was just, at that time, there was like no opening to have that conversation. And then we went through whatever we went through, and then there was, and like, we got clear on some stuff, right? Like, we, Ferdmans, we collectively suck at asking for help. It's just like one of these things, right? We're like, I can do it on my own. I can fix it on my own. I can get through it on my own, etc. And then more specifically with Guy, which is what I said earlier, like, how do you want that help? It's not like saying like, hey, I feel shitty, isn't the whole I get to read your mind and go, oh, you feel shitty, so that means you need this and this and this and this. I was like, dude, I can't read your mind. And I remember like I said that, and you were like, oh, like that was like a little bit of like a wake up moment. Like, oh yeah, I didn't tell you what that was supposed to look like.
Yeah, and I think there is an illusion, and I know this is built in biologically to all humans, that like we feel so exposed all the time that we think if we're like walking around in public and we're having an emotional state, like everyone knows what's going on. Truth is, nobody knows what's going on in your mind. Like nobody can read your thoughts. Nobody can really read your emotions. It's like you're having these very, unique experiences to you, and it feels like it's just out there for everybody to see. And the truth is that in moments like that, it's difficult to know what the fuck you need.
True.
You just, I kept thinking to myself, like, well, what do I need? Like, what would I request of people? And I kept coming up with, I don't know. And, if anything, again, just like, it's funny because like people would check in with me here and there. And even that sometimes is annoying, even though like part of me is like, because there's always this like, I don't want to feel broken. I don't want to feel like there's something to fix. And it's like, if you're not well, right, in the hospital or something, and people are checking in with you, part of you is like, oh, grateful that they're checking in. The other part is like a reminder that you're not well all the time, and like being pushed up in your face. So it's like, okay, is that what I want? Okay, well, I kind of want to hang out with my friends and my family and stuff like that, but it's like, I'm a miserable fuck right now, and I have to like put on that I'm not, you know? It's weird. It's just like this weird state of different dichotomies, and it's just really easy to make everybody wrong when you're upset. To the point where I spent most of the weekend just like secretly burning relationships in my head, like putting people on stakes and stuff, and just being like, well, fuck this and fuck them, and well, I show up for them, they don't show up for me, and stuff like that. And I basically almost went to bed on Sunday night being like, wow, dude, just, it's amazing what the mind wants to generate. And then it's just like, what I said with Ilan and our relationship, like that can only sustain itself and continue to grow if nobody takes responsibility for something. My friends don't even know I'm doing this, right? They don't know that I'm like, like it's like the witch hunt in my brain. They have no idea. So it's like, okay, I can now go back into my relationships, having created that experience for myself. And God only knows how that's going to show up. Maybe they say something like, hey, can you drive me to the airport? And I'm like, fuck you, because I've already like planted the seed that this relationship sucks. I sent out an email on Messenger to like close to 20 people I haven't talked to in a month, maybe some of them. And it was just like, I need to call myself out on my bullshit. Basically taking responsibility for that, whether I said something, felt something, or intended something. Even on the psychic level, I do believe we can send out our little vibrations to people. That I'm going to take responsibility for that. I'm basically ousting myself for what I've done, and I basically asked for forgiveness.
Yeah.
And but mind you, I haven't done anything to these people, like in the physical world. I'm just not committed to carrying stuff around with me. So if I oust myself, like I take responsibility for that, there is an opportunity for something new to be possible during the next interaction. Not to mention that they're aware of that. So if there is some upset that comes up, we can all be like, oh, that's that thing that happened, and then it's like cards on the table. You don't have to sit around, run around and hide and like subconsciously create these terrible circumstances that don't serve you or your relationships. Truth is, I just want deep, meaningful, juicy relationships,
Yeah. And what was most interesting, I think, for me about the whole interaction was how old these programs that took you over were. And it was, I hadn't heard these statements in probably since you moved to San Diego, to be honest.
At least,
so like 5 years at least.
At least, yeah.
If not more. And I think that was a little bit of a shock to me. And I knew that as they were arising, that what would occur, because like last time that guy had these conversations, he ended up moving to San Diego. Like he just, it was like, I'm going to change my environment.
That's not exactly true. I know you said that before too, but I didn't move to San Diego to run away from all that stuff. I mean, I think it made it convenient, but it wasn't the core reason I left.
Well, maybe at a subconscious level, but what was more interesting for me is like, I knew that you would start to get through this in like a super powerful, meaningful way, and that it would be really, really quick in the grand scheme of things. Like I know it probably didn't feel quick and doesn't feel quick. It just like in the grand scheme of things, these things that just took over weeks, months, whatever of your life prior, we're now, like we're 3 days, 4 days later, and here we are, right? And you're talking and assessing and like learning and growing from, and not consumed by or taken over by this thing. Obviously there's still stuff unfolding and you're still feeling stuff and releasing stuff and all that. It just amazing acknowledgement of the work that you've done for whatever, a decade and a half, right? 15 years to get to a place where you have this kind of conscious awareness to go through something like this with this kind of velocity in the moments that are, look, I mean, like these are the most painful moments. You know, when your heart is broken, like love is the most powerful force on the planet. And when it is gone, it just leaves holes. And so to be in that state, to go through it the way you did, to remain, if ever so slight in those really, really intense moments, like to have at least enough conscious awareness in that interaction that we had to like go, okay, what there is to do is just take responsibility. For just being willing to take the responsibility for like one thing shifted everything. And it's like you said, that's the kind of conversation that can devastate relationships and families and friendships, marriages, relationship with kids. Like that's it. That's the shit that creates wars. And it's never this big thing. Yeah. It's this little fucking thing that we make really, really big and then live and get righteous about it and all that stuff. And if people can just hear in this conversation a microcosm of that, map that onto any aspect of your life, any relationship right now that is not working, map this conversation onto that. And just ask yourself this one simple question. Not what could I, not what should I, nothing. What could I possibly be willing to be responsible for? Not that you did anything wrong, not that you're going to make the other person right, just like, what's one thing that you could be responsible for? And just start from that. And like, see, because I think what happens in that place, it just literally like takes that juice from that one part of the brain and starts shifting it to the other. And you could just start thinking different about whatever is occurring in your world.
I would just offer, right? There's two, if we're looking at the world of dualism, there's really two ways to operate out of anything, and it's fear or love. Yeah. Right. I think specifically when one is in love and that's taken away, it produces a lot of fucking fear about being alone and about not being good enough and rejection and everything else that it triggers as far as like core issues. That's why when we're talking about core wounds, you know, like a 5-year-old who gets rejected at school, or like you get rejected by your first love and you remember that sensation, or, you know, like all that stuff comes back in again, because it's just like, those are the trigger points, right? That's what makes that stuff fire. And it's like that specifically, I think, makes a lot of them fire at the same time versus just like, oh, I don't feel good enough today. It's like, I don't feel good enough. Like the world sucks. Everybody fucking sucks. Like everything sucks. Right. So yeah. I was aware as of a few days ago, like how much out of fear I was operating. Wow. And like you said, this is what wars are fought over. It really is. Because when you're afraid, you're attacking. Right? It's like fight or flight. So you're like defensive or you're attacking. And those are like the modes to operate out of. And I was sitting there like on Thursday and I'm like, Jesus, like I haven't dealt with fear like this in such a long time. And it's like, and it is like fear of being on your own and then, and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, okay, well, you know, this is a whole different opportunity of working on self-love. Because it's like, could I get to that level of experience of love without having an external force like a person, place, or thing? And that's what we're always doing. We're trying to find a person. We're trying to take some kind of medicine. We're trying to go on vacation. We're trying to change our environment. It's like there's a void here, person, place, or thing. Let's throw that into the void and see if that fixes this. Yeah. And then that thing is gone, and you're back in the void. Yeah. So like, you know, now with this and being aware of it and watching it again, that's like all the opportunities I see.
Amazing. Mm-hmm. I knew this was going to be a good one. I had a feeling.
They always are.
Yeah. No, because I knew that you were kind of in this like out of the bubble, able to look back at the bubble, which I just knew would be a very different aspect of it. Plus, it's super fresh and it just happened, and it's like, you know, everything is very, very clear. Thank you as always for being willing to go there on behalf of the rest of humanity.
Yes.
You're my spiritual samurai.
Yeah,
Yeah, I hope you continue to grow and peel away the layers of what this is and unfolding what this and how this is going to take you to that next level of your conscious awareness, and that we all get to share and learn and grow from it.
Thanks, man. Appreciate that.
And for the rest of you guys, if you're looking for these kind of tools on how we did this in our relationship, how we do this continuously for others, just come check out our Have It All Academy. SatoriPrime.com/coaching would be the best place to check it out. And if this conversation, which I have a feeling this is like one of those shareable conversations, if there's someone in your life that you're having a tough time with, this would be a good thing to share with them. Not as in like I'm making them wrong or there's something for them to fix. This is the kind of conversation that can really, really open people up to the fact that, oh, wow, I actually could be responsible for something, or there is another way to handle relationships. And yeah, feel free, please, to share this with anyone in your life that you think would get value from it.
And I would just offer, if you're going to share it, share with no expectation.
Yeah.
And, you know, it could definitely open up a conversation and some opportunity, especially around responsibility and different ways to listen, and just looking at how to, I don't like using the word overcome. Let's say grow from instead of overcome, like grow from experiences without making the human experience wrong. Trust me, I love to believe I'm superhuman and bionic as much as the next person. And in moments like these, you quickly find out how human you actually are. And there's a strength to that, you know, to making that right and not turning it into some, you know, truly negative experience that can destroy a lot of good things in your life. So I think there's a lot of power in that.
Awesome. Beautiful, man.
Yep.
Love you.
Love you too. All right,
bye, everyone.
We'll see you next time.